well, the drawbacks first. The drawbacks you're mentioning is that it's more difficult to learn something on your own because there's fewer backups. If I don't understand something, then I have to find like some other resource that explains it, or just kind of really like look through it in detail, try to. That's a skill, and lots of people don't possess that. So if they get stuck on topic X, they're just stuck, and they need someone else to help them out. That's part of what I try to teach in my courses, is that ability to, you get stuck at point X, how do you get out of that? So maybe I have a special aptitude at that other people lack. The other difficulty is that it's a lot more difficult, like the material is a lot more sparse. It's, you know, like some of the major courses are accessible, but it took me a month to put together an entire curriculum, and I think computer science is the easiest curriculum to establish online. So it's, in some senses, learning online is still a volume problem. There just isn't enough resources yet, even though it seems like there's an infinite amount. There just isn't enough yet. But I think that that's going to be fixed. That's going to be going away soon. All these open courseware initiatives and Khan Academy and things like that. I think the volume problem will get settled soon. And that's one problem. Another problem is that you don't have the same group interaction. So if you're doing programming and you don't want to just be a solo programmer, because, you know, very few people are solo programmers, then having group skills of being able to coordinate on projects is a big deal. And like I've done in my last degree, that was a majority of what I was doing, was coordinating group projects with other people, dealing with personalities, dealing with issues, presenting, communicating my ideas. So there are definite drawbacks to doing things on your own, but there's also, like, I'm doing a very sterile approach because I'm trying to benchmark against an existing formal education system. So you'll only see drawbacks because I'm doing what they're doing, but in a more difficult environment. Whereas there's a lot of things that if I change my criteria, that I don't want to necessarily compete with MIT, I want to just learn this. I can see a lot of opportunities that, you know, I could be doing instead. Like you could be joining open source initiatives, and that would give you a lot of group work, a lot of programming. My friend Manish just finished his CS degree at Stanford, and he was telling me that right now a lot of the employers are looking at your GitHub as your resume. So it's not even where you went to school, it's let's just look at your open profile and see how you're helping people and how you're working on projects, and just see your code and see whether you can do what you're saying you're going to do. So that's another thing, like whether you view it as like a portfolio approach or whether you view it as like, you know, a learning academic theory approach. So there's lots of different ways to education. I think that I'm kind of doing more a controlled test rather than necessarily the best possible self-education platform. But you know, that's something that I feel is necessary as well, because right now, where the assumption is that you can't earn an MIT degree if you don't go to MIT, and I want to say, well, you know, whether or not it's wise to learn everything that the MIT teaches, I kind of want to say, well, yeah, if you really want to do it, you can do the entire MIT degree. You know, whether you want to go completely different curriculum is another issue. But.
And I think, like, you touched on this, but credentials, I think, is, like, a huge topic, right? Like, right now, especially in the computer science field, for programming, the formal credential acquisition process, like, what school you come from, like, who did you study under, is no longer relevant, right? It's all about, like, especially in entrepreneurial culture, it's all about, like, how fast can you actually join the real workforce? How fast can you actually build things that people are using and, like, contribute in a meaningful way?
Yeah.
That's a new standard. But we still have some difficulty in shifting from, like, saying, like, oh, I went to MIT, and getting, like, instant recognition that you can't really translate saying, like, I took a lot of online classes.
Yeah.
That still doesn't have the same kind of flavor to it.
Well, there's always going to be a signaling benefit from higher institutions, and that's always, like, and I don't even think that has to do with their quality of their education, but even just how selective they are. Like, to get into MIT and to graduate from it says something about you, and I don't think that that's going to change in a new world. But what I think is going to change is that, especially if you're entrepreneurial minded, getting academic credentials is not the only way to signal yourself. Like, there's a lot of things you can be doing, like, you know, in a certain way. I'm not planning on pursuing a career in computer science the way a lot of other people are. Like, I already have the career I want. But like doing a YouTube channel where I talk about learning it, like that has some kind of, like, if I can, you know, there's something there as well. That it's sort of weird. It shows that I have ambition. It shows that like I'm smart. It shows a lot of characteristics that I'm signaling through being able to do this. And so people don't think outside the box. They think in this sort of, well, I have to have a degree from X. And, you know, if you can, then that's great. Get all the advantages you can. But I also know tons of people that they're a lot smarter about how they market themselves and how they sell themselves in a fast-changing world. And you don't need it. There's lots of other ways to signal yourself. I have a good friend. You know who Ben Casnocha is?
We do not know.
So look up ben.casnocha, and he's actually probably someone you should be interviewing more than me, but he started a software company when he was 15. Went to college, decided this wasn't for him, dropped out. Now he's writing a book with Reid Hoffman, who's the co-founder of PayPal, I believe, and LinkedIn. So, like, you know, and he's 23. So, like, you don't need to have big, like, you can get it in other ways, is what I'm saying. Like, that, you know, if you compare Ben Casnocha to almost any MIT graduate, he will be more impressive than the MIT graduate. So it's not like they're limited in the criteria. If you can get them, then that's great. But if you want to do a different route, there's tons of paths to the same thing.
Right. And I think, like, there's some people who are enlightened and trying to start these paths. We met, like, a few Theo fellows. And the Theo program, like, is literally, I think, one way that you can incentivize people to adopt this new framework of, like, what cool stuff can you do with your life outside of following, like, this traditional path.
Yeah. But you don't even, like, the thing too is that a Thiel Fellowship is great. It's a great, I think that's a great process, but you don't even need an outside panel to award you with $100,000 on scholarship to go do what you want. Like, you don't need permission to do things. Like I started my first business when I was in high school. Like, it's so cheap. You don't need other people's permission to go do cool things. You don't need other people's money. You don't need someone's approval to go do things. You just have to do it. And, you know, my friend here, who's here right now, Manish, is a perfect example of that. Like, he wrote a best-selling computer science book for programming, game programming for teens when he was 14. Like, you don't need someone's permission to go do these things. You just do them, and then if you keep doing them, people won't be able to ignore you anymore. And so that's kind of the philosophy I have. And so, you can go kind of a standard traditional route, but you don't have to. If you don't fit into that model, you don't have to do it. You don't need people's permission now. This isn't the 1960s where it costs $1 million to start a business. It's, you know, you can do it in your basement for free.
Definitely. So, something interesting is that most people I know, right, like, I'm over here helping with Brown's entrepreneurship program, and recently we threw a mixer to join the people doing entrepreneurship on campus and the people who are in the CS department. And they are not the most, like, interactive of groups normally. So we, like, thought of cool, creative ways to bring them together. But
what do you guys study?
I am studying biomedical engineering.
Okay.
Applied math.
Applied math. Okay.
Yeah. So we're both, like, hardcore science people. But
that's good. It's good. That's the thing that I regret, is that I shouldn't have studied business. I should have, I can't say that entirely, but I feel that if I'd done my business degree how I'm doing this one right now, or if I'd done it in a year, it would have been, like, much more efficient for value per year time investment. I really enjoyed university, but I think that doing a science degree or a technical degree is better if you want to be an entrepreneur, because the business stuff you can learn in the field, and you know, business is just not really a codified base of knowledge. It's just a bunch of people's opinions. So, unless you want to be an accountant or some guy working on Wall Street, you know, if you just want to be a startup, like, that's not something a school can